care unit, patients are there for a long period of time, and the computer precisely records how much drug it gave. So we have very precise records over a period of days about how much drug was given. With the computer, we would increase the amount of drug in the blood if the person needed more sedation, or we would reduce the amount of drug, but again, all controlled by the computer. And it was a double-blind study, which simply means that we didn't know which drug the computer was giving. The computer knew. The computer knew if it was lorazepam or midazolam, but the person using the computer did not know, so that we were trying to see if there was a difference between lorazepam and midazolam in the intensive care unit. We gathered blood levels from the artery, and we used those blood levels that were gathered at regular intervals from the artery to get a very precise model to link the dose of lorazepam or midazolam to the concentration in the blood.
And why did you rely upon this study in this case?
I relied upon it because of the amount of data gathered in this study was huge. I don't recall the number of subjects, although I can look at the paper and tell you. But each subject was studied very intensively over a period of days. And so, in my view, this study provides the best pharmacokinetic model to use to predict lorazepam concentrations after a dose.
And in that field of pharmacokinetics, is this article widely relied upon and cited by other researchers?
Yes.
Where was this study done?
This study was done at Stanford University, specifically the Palo Alto Administration's Veterans Hospital.
And you indicated, I believe, that both you and Dr. Geller were the principal investigators?
Correct.
And who was responsible for what as it pertained to the study?
Dr. Geller was responsible for conducting the study. He was the head of the intensive care unit. So these were his patients, and he was responsible for conducting the study, and I was responsible for the data analysis.
We have just one moment, Your Honor. Now, Dr. Shafer, you've reviewed, in your analysis of the case, you reviewed the toxicology findings. Are you aware that the lorazepam measured at 0.169 in the femoral blood?
I am.
And are you aware from the defendant's statement that he stated he gave just 4 milligrams of lorazepam throughout the night in 2 separate 2 milligram dosages?
I am.
And in your analysis of the case, did you conduct one of your models or simulations to compare whether that dosage of 4 milligrams of lorazepam would match up to a reading of 0.169 lorazepam in the femoral blood?
I did.
Going then to the next slide. Of People's 217. Can you, first of all, just very simply kind of walk us through this model, what is represented, and kind of describe the components of the model before we get into the substance of it, please?
Glad to. There will be a lot of pictures like this coming up, so let me orient you to what we're looking at. Down here is time, and pharmacokinetic models, drugs in motion, talk about what happens to drugs over time. So this looks at the time since midnight. That would be midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and allows us to see over time what's happening to the concentration of drug. Now what the model predicts is this thing here, the plasma lorazepam concentration. How much lorazepam, what concentration of lorazepam is in the plasma. And it starts at 0, because the model assumes when you start off here that there's no drug. That's the way these models start. The body starts empty. And then Conrad Murray, in his interview, stated that at 2 o'clock, approximately, he gave 2 milligrams. And what this shows is the blood concentration with a 2 milligram dose. And what you look at here and say, well, gee, it starts at 0, but right after he pushes that into the vein, the blood concentration goes to about 0.05. So I can see what we would have measured if you had measured the concentration in the blood. Now, of course, the body starts working on it immediately. The body starts trying to metabolize it immediately. And additionally, the drug initially is all in the vein, but over a few minutes it starts to go into other tissues. Here we're only looking at the amount in the blood. That's all we're trying to predict. But both because of metabolism and also because the drug is moving into other tissue, something we call distribution. It's distributing to these other tissues. Because of that, the concentrations fall quite quickly. And you can see here, right after the dose, it goes up to 0.05. But an hour later, it's about a third of that. So it goes up and it falls. Some of that is the liver removing the drug. Most of that is actually the drug moving into other tissue. That's really what mostly is reducing the concentration. And then, coming up here at 5.
And that represents 5 a.m.
5 a.m. There's another 2 milligram dose. Well, we get to a higher level. The reason we get to a higher level is there's already drug in the body. So we're stacking this dose on top of the concentrations that had been there when the dose was given. And at this point here, you see it going up, not quite to 0.05, but a little bit higher, because it's got this dose that it's being stacked on top of. But again, there's a very rapid washout of drug, so that by 6 o'clock in the morning, we're down here, maybe about 0.3, 0.4. I have this all on my laptop. I can give you the exact number. But we're down to about a third. And by noon, by the time of Michael Jackson's death, we are looking at a predicted concentration in the femoral vein, that's where the drug was measured on autopsy, that's only 10% of what was measured. It's only 10% of what was measured. So this did not happen.
And again, the red line represents
the blood concentration. I chose red for blood. It's the blood concentration.
And this green line indicating femoral vein concentration, what is that?
So that is correct. This green line right here, femoral vein concentration, is what was measured on autopsy. That's the 0.169 that was measured. 0.15, 0.20, 0.169 is right here. And it gives us, if you will, a target. This is the number that we need to account for, because that's what they measured. And this dose of two doses of 2 milligrams doesn't get you there. It's not consistent with what was found on autopsy.
So Michael Jackson received more than 4 milligrams of lorazepam.
Correct.
Objection misstates the evidence whether he received.
I'll sustain the objection to the characterization, and the answer is stricken. Disregard it.
The blood levels prove to you that there's more than 4 milligrams of lorazepam administered to Michael Jackson.
Absolutely.
Your Honor, may I inquire what time the court's going to take a break?
I was thinking about 10:15.
I'm wondering if we could do a little early so I could try to get the PowerPoint. I think it'll be important to have better color in the slides.
Sure enough, is that okay?
Sure.
Hopefully it's okay, so you can have brunch, ladies and gentlemen. Please remember all the admonishments, and we'll be taking the mid-morning break at this time. It's about 15 minutes or so. Thank you. Thank you.
Your Honor, is it possible to dim just the third bank of lights, the third switch?
Mr. Sale?
Thank
Is
you.
that the one?
Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Shafer, okay, just again, so as we look at future models you've created, so the red line here indicates the blood levels, and here the green line as it relates to lorazepam relates to the 0.169 of the drug lorazepam found in the coroner's toxicology findings. Is that correct?
Exactly right.
And so based on your modeling premised on the 0.169 in the femoral blood, the 4 milligram dosage was not possible. There was more in the body. Is that correct?
Correct. If this had been the model,
Objection mischaracterized. It's not that it's not possible, there's more in the body, is it?
I'm going to sustain the objection, strike out the last answer, disregard it. You may re-ask.
Go ahead and please explain the chart.
Well, is that a question?
Could you please go ahead and explain the chart?
Thank you.
yes. If this had been the total that Michael Jackson received, the femoral vein concentration should have been here, which is approximately 0.03. In other words, this is what should have been measured down here, not this concentration up here.
Can you explain that again, please?
If this accurately describes the doses of all the drug that Michael Jackson received, then on his examination, the coroner should have found this level. That's what the coroner would have seen if this is what Michael Jackson received.
And when you said this level, you're pointing to the... Whoops.
When I say this level, I'm pointing to this point right here, and you have to read all the way back here. If that's 0.05, this is, let's say it's half of it, 0.025. That's what that is. That's what the coroner would have seen when he did the autopsy.
And you're pointing to the 12 o'clock.
Yes, at 12 o'clock here, because there, at that time everything stops. Circulation stops. And so everything is frozen at this, the clock stops at this point in time.
And with this simulation, assuming only 2 doses of 2 milligrams each, you never see a reading reaching 0.169 in the femoral blood. Is that correct?
His witness.
It's an expert.
This is an expert. Overruled. You may answer it.
Correct. The level is clearly below, and below by about threefold.
Now, did you conduct a simulation which, based on the data available to you and based on your pharmacokinetic modeling, would explain a finding of 0.169 in the femoral blood?
Yes, I did.
Going to the next slide, here entitled 10 doses of 4 milligrams each. Could you please explain these findings?
Yes. In this case right here, what I have modeled is the administration of a 4 milligram dose. That would be the amount that's in 1 cc of drug, 1 milliliter of drug.
And this is by intravenous?
By intravenous injection. And I'm suggesting that one was given